and we are gathered here today in order to express our outrage and condemnation for what the Israeli cabinet decided yesterday with regard of what will amount into the annexation of the land of the Palestinian people, especially in the West Bank. We condemn that position, and we also mobilizing here at the United Nations all components of the UN, beginning with the Security Council, for the immediate reversal of this illegal position of the Israeli government. We want the Security Council to shoulder its responsibility and to show resolve and determination. We will see exactly how it will unfold, and then we will assess and evaluate and decide on further steps.
The Arab group condemns in the strongest terms the illegal Israeli decision and measures aimed at imposing unlawful Israeli sovereignty, entrenching settlement activities, and imposing a new legal and administrative reality in the occupied West Bank in a manner that accelerates attempts at its illegal annexation and the displacement of the Palestinian people. The group renews its call upon the international community to assume its legal and moral responsibilities, to compel Israel to halt its dangerous escalation in the occupied West Bank, and to reverse its unlawful policies and practices, and to seize the inciting statements of its officials.
OIC Group condemns in the strongest terms the illegal Israeli decisions and measures aimed at imposing unlawful Israeli sovereignty, entrenching settlement activity, and enforcing a new legal and administrative reality in the occupied West Bank. We stress that expansionist Israeli policies and illegal measures pursued by the Israeli government in the occupied West Bank only serve to fuel violence and conflict in the region. They undermine the two-state solution, the ongoing peace efforts, and represent an assault on the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people to realize their independent and sovereign state on the 1967 lines, with occupied Jerusalem as its capital.
At United Nations headquarters in New York on Tuesday, Palestine's permanent observer Riyad Mansour stood flanked by ambassadors from the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation to deliver what he described as a message of outrage and condemnation. According to Al Jazeera, Anadolu Agency, and Arab News, all of which covered the press stakeout, Mansour stated that the assembled group was responding to Israeli measures approved by the Security Cabinet on Sunday, which he claimed could amount to the annexation of Palestinian land, especially in the West Bank. The event marked the beginning of what Palestinian diplomats are calling a full-scale multilateral mobilization, the most coordinated diplomatic response to Israeli actions at the United Nations since the June 2025 war. Mansour confirmed that, acting on instructions from Palestinian leaders, his office had already begun circulating a letter to the UN Security Council, the Secretary General, and the President of the General Assembly. According to Arab News, the letter accused Israel of grave breaches of international law, including violations of Security Council resolutions and the July 2024 advisory opinion by the International Court of Justice. Mansour told reporters he delivered the letter in person to the President of the Security Council, British Ambassador James Kariuki, on Monday afternoon. He called on the Council to shoulder its responsibility to defend international law, including human rights law and humanitarian law, and to force Israel to honor and respect Security Council resolutions, specifically citing resolutions 2334 and 2803. The letter, according to Arab News, urged the Security Council to ensure respect of its resolutions and to hold Israel accountable for what it described as flagrant violations of the Council's authority and the UN Charter. It added that the international community was duty-bound to consider taking action, including imposing sanctions, to compel Israel to reverse its policies. The diplomatic machinery is now moving on multiple tracks. Mansour stated that Bahrain's ambassador, Jamal al-Rawayeh, the Arab representative on the Security Council, had formally requested an official closed meeting for a detailed briefing scheduled for Thursday morning. This followed an initial informal briefing that Mansour said took place on Tuesday on the margins of another session. Mansour expressed gratitude to Arab and OIC members currently serving on the council, including Somalia and Pakistan, for defending Palestinian rights within the body. He also announced that a group of Arab ambassadors and OIC chairs would meet with the elected 10 members of the Security Council at the Bahrain mission later that same afternoon to discuss the council's responsibility in responding to the Israeli measures. The meeting with the E10, the 10 elected non-permanent members, reflects a deliberate strategy to build support among council members who are not subject to permanent member veto politics and who may be more receptive to Palestinian demands for concrete action. Mansour described the process as one that would continue until the February 19th Palestine session, with escalating engagement at each stage. Syria's UN ambassador Ibrahim Olabi, serving as president of the Arab group for February, delivered a formal statement on behalf of the group, as reported by Al Jazeera, Arab News, and The National. The Arab group, according to Olabi, alleges that the Israeli decision and measures are illegal and are aimed at imposing what it described as unlawful Israeli sovereignty, entrenching settlement activities, and imposing a new legal and administrative reality in the occupied West Bank in a manner that the group claims accelerates attempts at annexation and the displacement of the Palestinian people. The statement reaffirmed that Israel has no sovereignty over the occupied Palestinian territory and warned that continued expansionist policies contribute to fueling violence and conflict in the region. Olabi described the measures as a flagrant violation of international law and an assault on the inalienable right of the Palestinian people to self-determination and to the independence of their sovereign state on the lines of June 4, 1967, with occupied Jerusalem as its capital. The Arab group declared the Israeli measures null and void and cited both Resolution 2334, which condemns Israeli actions aimed at altering the demographic composition of the occupied territory, and the 2024 ICJ advisory opinion, which concluded that Israel's continued presence in the occupied Palestinian territory constitutes a violation of international law. The Arab group also renewed its call upon the international community to assume its legal and moral responsibilities to compel Israel to halt its dangerous escalation and to reverse its unlawful policies. Olabi specifically demanded that Israeli officials cease what the group described as inciting statements. The statement welcomed the February 9th statement issued by Secretary General Guterres and commended all its contents. Palestinian officials and legal experts, according to Al Jazeera's reporting, have warned that the new Israeli measures effectively terminate the framework established by the 1993 Oslo Accords, stripping the Palestinian Authority of its remaining civil powers in areas A and B and legislating the de facto annexation of the West Bank. Turkey's UN ambassador Ahmet Yildiz, speaking as chair of the OIC's Ministerial Council, delivered a parallel condemnation, according to Anadolu Agency and Yeni Safak. The OIC group, Yildiz stated, condemns in the strongest terms the illegal Israeli decisions and measures aimed at imposing unlawful Israeli sovereignty, entrenching settlement activity, and enforcing any legal and administrative reality in the occupied West Bank. He warned that expansionist Israeli policies only serve to fuel violence and conflict in the region, and described the measures as an assault on the fundamental rights of the Palestinian people to realize their independent and sovereign state on the 1967 lines, with occupied Jerusalem as its capital. The OIC statement reiterated support for the two-state solution in accordance with international legitimacy, the Arab Peace Initiative, and the New York Declaration on the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine. The coordinated nature of the statements, delivered consecutively at the same press event, was designed to demonstrate institutional unity between the two largest diplomatic blocs representing the Arab and Muslim majority worlds. In a strategically significant moment, Mansour directly invoked the stated position of U.S. President Donald Trump. According to The National, Mansour highlighted what he called the well-known position of President Trump, referencing statements the president has made opposing Israeli annexation of the West Bank. Mansour told reporters that he had referred to Trump's position many times in his Security Council statements, citing the president's formulation of no annexation, no occupation, and no displacement. He then described Netanyahu as the prime minister of an extreme government who is coming to Washington, challenging everyone with plans to impose annexation and take the land of the Palestinian people. Mansour stated that he hopes and expects that the powerful partners will stop Israel from getting away with this very violation of international law and the will of the entire community of nations. The timing was deliberate. Netanyahu is scheduled to meet Trump at the White House on Wednesday, and by framing the Israeli measures as contradicting Trump's own stated position, Mansour was attempting to create political space for Washington to apply pressure on Jerusalem. The strategy carries particular weight given that Resolution 2803, which Mansour cited alongside Resolution 2334, reflects the framework of Trump's own 20-point plan for Gaza, a plan the UK presidency has explicitly stated it supports. By linking the West Bank measures to the broader peace process endorsed by Washington, Palestinian diplomats are arguing that Israel's actions undermine not only international law but the very diplomatic architecture that the Trump administration has helped construct. The institutional timeline is now taking shape. Mansour confirmed that the regular Security Council meeting on the question of Palestine is scheduled for February 19th. He stated that the meeting would be presided over by a senior UK official, according to the schedule set by the UK presidency under James Kariuki. The UK holds the rotating presidency of the Security Council for February, and Kariuki's press conference at the start of the month, according to the UN's own coverage, outlined that the Palestine meeting would address aid delivery, the ceasefire plan's implementation, and other critical issues, including the deteriorating conditions in the West Bank. Between now and that meeting, Mansour stated that Palestinian diplomats would be requesting meetings with all 5 permanent members of the Security Council, including the United States, as well as with Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The goal, he said, is to mobilize fully the entire components of the Security Council to demand reversal of the Israeli measures. The Secretary General's own position has already been articulated. On February 9th, one day after the Israeli cabinet decision, Guterres issued a statement through his spokesman Stefan Dujarric, as reported by Al Jazeera and Global Security citing Press TV. According to the statement, Guterres reiterated that all Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, along with their associated regime and infrastructure, have no legal validity and constitute a flagrant violation of international law, as well as relevant United Nations resolutions. He called on Israel to reverse the measures, warning that the current trajectory is eroding the viability of a negotiated two-state solution. The Arab Group statement explicitly welcomed the Secretary General's intervention, praising what it described as his renewed affirmation of the illegality of the Israeli presence in the occupied West Bank. Mansour told reporters that the Palestinian position was in line with the Secretary General's demand for reversal, effectively aligning the diplomatic campaign with the institutional authority of the UN's highest official. The content of Mansour's letter to the Security Council, as described by Arab News, goes beyond standard diplomatic language. It reportedly urged the Council not only to ensure respect of its resolutions, but to hold Israel accountable for what it described as flagrant violations of the Council's authority and the UN Charter. The letter added that the international community was duty-bound to consider taking action, including the possibility of imposing sanctions to compel Israel to reverse its policies, including those measures that could lead to annexation. This represents a significant escalation in Palestinian diplomatic language at the United Nations, where previous efforts have typically focused on condemnation rather than enforcement mechanisms. Whether the Security Council can act on such demands remains constrained by the veto power of permanent members, particularly the United States, which has historically shielded Israel from binding Council action. Both the Arab Group and OIC statements anchored their legal arguments in the July 2024 advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. That opinion, as cited by Arab News and referenced in both statements, concluded that Israel's decades-long occupation of Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem and Gaza, was unlawful. The court called for an end to the occupation, a halt to settlement activity, the evacuation of settlers, and reparations. While ICJ advisory opinions are not legally binding, they carry significant weight in international discourse and provide a framework for member states seeking to challenge Israeli policies through multilateral institutions. The combination of the ICJ opinion, multiple Security Council resolutions, And the Secretary General's statements creates what Palestinian diplomats are calling an unprecedented alignment of international legal and institutional authority against the Israeli government's latest measures. Mansour was deliberate in framing the mobilization as a test of collective international resolve. He stated that Palestine is not alone, that it has Arab depth, Islamic depth, and many other friends who will step up to the plate. He described the situation as a test of whether Netanyahu will succeed or whether the international community will collectively succeed in defending its agreed positions. The framing was designed to project diplomatic isolation onto Israel while positioning the Palestinian cause as aligned with the established international legal order. Mansour confirmed that the Palestinian mission would continue briefing the media and engaging with council members in the coming days, and that additional meetings with the press would follow as the diplomatic process unfolds toward the February 19th Security Council session. The convergence of timelines amplifies the pressure. Netanyahu arrives in Washington for his meeting with Trump on Wednesday, the same day these diplomatic mobilizations are accelerating at the United Nations. The closed Security Council briefing requested by Bahrain is set for Thursday. The full Security Council meeting on the Palestine question follows on February 19th under UK presidency. Palestinian, Arab, and OIC diplomats are requesting meetings with all P5 members, and the Secretary General has already publicly demanded reversal. Whether this coordinated campaign produces concrete action or remains confined to statements and closed briefings will depend on whether the Security Council's most powerful members, particularly the United States, are willing to translate institutional language into enforceable consequences. For now, the diplomatic architecture is being assembled. The measures that triggered this mobilization, according to Al Jazeera and Arab News, include ending restrictions that prevented individual Israeli settlers from purchasing land in the West Bank, unsealing land registry records, transferring building permit authority in the Hebron area from Palestinian to Israeli control, and expanding Israeli enforcement powers into areas A and B that were historically under Palestinian Authority jurisdiction. Al Jazeera's correspondent described them as the most dangerous and serious push towards annexation and the most critical decision since Israel occupied the West Bank in 1967. Whether the international response matches the scale of the provocation remains the open question. Subscribe to WLA for continuing coverage of the developments reshaping the Middle East.